So in 2 total matchups this year, both games between the Rams and Seahawks were decided by 3 total points. The first one, the Rams won at home just barely by 2 points, and the second one, the Seahawks won at home in overtime by 1 point. If that doesn't tell you about the caliber of these 2 teams, I really don't know what will. But there is one thing I do know though. Both these teams are definitely the best teams in the NFC. You could even argue the NFL, and both are going to duke it out in the NFC Championship game. I am so excited. And I'm just thankful that the Rams have another week to be playing football, another week to be talking about football. I realize there's a lot of fan bases in the NFL that don't get to have the privilege of going to championship games and Super Bowls and all of that. So regardless of the result, let's just enjoy this week for what it is. Okay, let's start off with this Rams defense versus this Seahawks offense. But before I do, I want to get a feeler of what people are thinking heading into this game against Sam Darnold. Whether you're a Seahawks fan, whether you're a Rams fan, or something else, how confident are you in him in the playoffs against this Rams team that really has had a lot of success against him? So let me know your confidence level going up against him, or if you're a Seahawks fan going into this game with him. Sam Darnold is one of those weird examples in the NFL of the first few years of his career kind of defining who he is, to the point that even when he's played good football, it's taken a lot of people time to be able to get around the idea that he's a good quarterback. I mean, I'm not even a Seahawks fan, but I still see the comments about how Sam Darnold is going to see ghosts against a team that is about to play him, and I just think it's a bit of an overplayed narrative just because that was all the way back when he's on the Jets. I mean, let's face it, it's been a lot of time since Sam Darnold was on the Jets, and he's had a lot of time to grow. He had a good year on the Vikings, he just had a good year on the Seahawks. So I'm not in the camp of Sam Darnold being an absolute superstar who can just carry a team all the time. I'm also not in the camp of people that just think he is screwed because he's about to play the Los Angeles Rams, or the argument that he's really only won the one playoff game, which was last week, and he didn't have to do a lot in that game. But I will admit, as a Rams fan, and I think an NFL fan can admit this, the Rams have had success against Sam Darnold. Like, you go back to the Vikings game in the playoffs last year, we know what happened there, all the sacks, the interceptions, and the way he just kind of crumbled under the pressure there. The first meeting between Sam Darnold on the Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams this year, the Rams got 4 interceptions on him and made him look terrible in that game. And even in the most recent game that the Rams lost in overtime to the Seahawks, Sam Darnold threw 2 interceptions. One was to a defensive lineman in Kobe Turner, and another one was just a really good play by Josh Wallace going out there and getting the pick, nearly a pick 6 in that game. So I do admit that Sam Darnold does struggle against the Los Angeles Rams, so that does give me hope, but I do think that the Seahawks can have a game plan where he doesn't have to do a ton against this Rams team. If they execute that well, it doesn't really matter who's at quarterback for them. And I guess I don't really want to go that far because Sam Darnold is beyond competent, but what I mean is going up against this Rams team, there's definitely a game plan the Seahawks can enable to be able to have it where all the pressure isn't on Sam Darnold and they can win the game. I mean, you look at that 49ers Seahawks game last week where the 49ers just got absolutely obliterated by the Seahawks team, 41-6. You may think that that was the Seahawks offense dominating if you didn't watch that game, but really the Seahawks defense, as they have done all year long, really just dominated the 49ers, continued to get turnovers to give the ball back, and the special teams played well for the Seahawks. The run game played so well that in that game, Sam Darnold only threw the ball 17 times for roughly over only 120 yards. So despite the Seahawks winning 41-6 in that game, how much of that really was Sam Darnold? And I think that's a big key for the Rams in this game, and matching up against Sam Darnold is don't let that happen again. We know the Seahawks defense has such a great rapport, and they have such a great leader in Mike MacDonald. They have pieces everywhere. They can win games just like they did last week against anybody. If their defense is playing that well, if their run game is playing well in the Seattle Seahawks like it was last week, you really don't have to ask Sam Darnold to carry the weight of the team if that is the formula. And so you have to acknowledge that as a Rams fan, that yes, they have Sam Darnold and the Rams have had so much success against him, but yet that Seahawks defense is incredible and their run game is really getting going. And so if you have those two things working in tandem plus good special teams, it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is because you just have a good formula to be able to beat anybody. So yeah, on the year, Sam Darnold had over 4,000 yards passing for the Seattle Seahawks. He had 25 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. It is important to note that of those 14 interceptions, the Rams got 6 of them this year. So definitely something to keep in mind. And that's why I want to put some of that load back on Darnold to have to throw it more times than just 17. You obviously know that JSN is the lead guy in this offense. I mean, he had the most receiving yards in the NFL. He just absolutely blew up for the Seahawks this year, and he's going to be getting all the attention. I think the Rams did a good job last time against JSN. It took till like the 3rd and 4th quarter for him to really start stepping into his own of what we know he can do. But overall, the Rams actually had a really good game plan against JSN last game. Obviously, you got our former guy in Cooper Kupp. He actually led the team in receiving yards last week. Now, there weren't a lot of passing yards to go with that, but Cooper Kupp in the playoffs, he's got experience. He knows our defense, and so we're going to have to keep an eye on Cooper Kupp for sure. AJ Barner is a bit of an underrated weapon in that offense. I feel like more people are starting to talk about him, but especially especially in the red zone and getting those touchdowns. He may not pile up a ton of yards, but I think he's one of those guys that gets those third down conversions. He gets those touchdowns. And Jared Verse and AJ Barner have something going between the two, so that's definitely going to be a guy to watch in this game. And Rashid Shaheed is a guy that is only getting more and more involved into this offense. I don't really got to tell you who he is because the Rams have already played him. At this point, this is going to be his third time that he's played the Rams this year. And obviously we know to really break that game open when the Rams were up by 16 in the fourth quarter, looking like they were going to win that last game, it was Rashid Shaheed punt return that got him back in the game and a big end around play. And he's just getting more and more involved in this offense. Obviously had a kick return last week, so he's going to be another dangerous guy to watch out for. With all the different ways they can deploy him, it's scary because he doesn't have to be the number one guy, and he can do a lot of different things for an offense, for special teams, and the Rams know him well. Now, Kenneth Walker is the leading rusher on this team. He's got over 1,000 yards rushing, only 5 touchdowns, but it's important to note that he was splitting time with Zach Charbonnet, and a lot of people really wanted Kenneth Walker just to be the bulk guy getting the carries just because of how good he is and the potential that he has. But Zach Charbonnet was really taking away a lot of those reps from Kenneth Walker, but now Zach Charbonnet went down in the playoffs, and in that last game against the 49ers, as I mentioned earlier, Kenneth Walker had 116 rushing yards, 3 total touchdowns, and he's an absolute threat. He broke off that long one against the Rams last time out too. So this is going to be a guy that you're going to need to stop because the Seahawks run game has really come to life over the last couple weeks. And I have to admit that's scary as a Rams fan because this is something that they were kind of struggling with earlier on in the year. They couldn't quite get it going, but they have gotten it rolling recently. And so that's going to be big to have to stop, especially with Walker having the game that he just had. So even though Zach Charbonnet is going to be out for this game and he's going to miss the rest of the playoffs, Kenneth Walker is more than capable, and I think we saw that last week. Some key matchups I'm keeping my eye on. I'm actually going to start off with Poona Ford versus Kenneth Walker. Now, I've been trying to give my guy Poona Ford some credit this year just because everybody talks about Nate Landman and how he's helped to stop the run, which is definitely not even a question. But Poona Ford always gets forgotten, and being that Poona Ford is a former Seahawk and the impact he's made in this Rams run defense, I think is going to be pivotal yet again this week going up against Kenneth Walker. I talked about it earlier. The Seahawks are getting so much better running the football. They've just continued to take strides in that area, and you again don't want to have a game where Sam Darnold doesn't have to do all that much and it's mainly the run game, the defense, and special teams winning it for the Seahawks. So stopping that run is going to be a huge priority for this Rams defense, and Poona Ford and obviously Nate Landman are big guys to be able to do that. Poona Ford has just been exploding for the Rams this year, and I just don't think he gets enough talk for what he's been able to do. And he had some big plays against the Bears last week in stopping the run. And again, Nate Landman is big here too, but Poona Ford, if you can stop him before he even gets to the second level, Kenneth Walker, that's going to be huge. Another key matchup for me is going to be Emmanuel Forbes against JSN. Now, Emmanuel Forbes did get banged up last week. I expect him to play this week, and I hope he does. As I mentioned, the last matchup against the Seahawks, the Rams actually did a really good job against JSN for a while, and he kind of exploded in that fourth quarter. But Forbes is a guy that seems to play with a lot more confidence in prime time when all the eyes are on him compared to just like a regular day on a Sunday, like 2 o'clock window, whatever it is. So watching Forbes against JSN is going to be big because I think each of them are going to have their wins. Obviously, that's just kind of how it goes in the NFL, but this one's going to be fun to watch because it feels like Forbes is playing with a little bit more confidence now. These isolated one-on-ones is going to be really fun when they happen. My last key matchup is going to be Jared Verse against Charles Cross. Now, Charles Cross, their left tackle, did end up getting hurt last game, and I don't know if he's going to play yet, but I would expect him to play just because it's the NFC Championship game, season's on the line. I think he's going to do anything he can to play. And Jared Verse, we're still waiting for that big playoff game to happen, and I mean, it does feel right against Sam Darnold to have that big breakout playoff game, but it feels like we've been waiting for this Rams pass rush to really dominate in the playoffs. It would be awesome if it would be this game, if you get them to pass it a lot and be able to get those hits on Sam Darnold, force some mistakes. And Jared Verse is likely going to have to go up against Charles Cross if he plays, and that has been a really fun matchup when these two go at it against each other, so watch that one closely. I also want to throw in Cam Kitchens versus Sam Darnold because for whatever reason, Cam Kitchens, since he's been with the Rams, just has a knack for getting turnovers against Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. And not only that, but Geno Smith and the Seahawks last year, so that's going to be a very fun one to watch just to see if that can continue in some sort of way against the Seahawks getting those interceptions. All right, some defensive keys here for the Rams defense versus the Seahawks offense. I'm going to start off with winning first down. This was my key against the Seahawks last time we played. I think if the Seahawks can stay on track and get into those third and short scenarios and have good success on first down, that's kind of what this offense does really well. And if you can get them into 2nd and 10, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 8, and things like that, I feel a lot more confident about this Rams defense rather than if you're letting up a 4-yard run or a 5-yard, curl route catch and all of that. So if you can win first down, I think that's going to be big for this Rams game. And again, force Darnold to have to pass on those big third downs and hopefully in longer situations would be a big key for me. And speaking of Darnold, for my second key for this Rams defense is just force the game on Sam Darnold. And you could twist this around and just say like stop the run in that kind of way. But whatever it is, don't let him have 17 attempts passing, 20 attempts passing. Like, make it go up into the 30s, into the 40s. That is the kind of game I want to see, because I think that is when we start to see those mistakes come for Sam Darnold, especially if we're getting good pass rush on him. So force this game on Darnold. Don't let it just be him handing it off, making a key throw here and there, because he can make those throws, but just put it more of that pressure on him, make him have to throw the ball more than he would like. And my third and final key for the Rams defense versus the Seahawks offense is winning the red zone. I think this is going to be big here. I think both teams are going to be able to get it into the red zone, and I think in playoff games like these, it can sometimes come down to something as simple of who executed better in the red zone. I think if this Rams defense can do a good job in the red zone, like they did in that first matchup at SoFi Stadium, the Seahawks got into the red zone multiple times, but the Rams were able to hold them to either a fourth down stop or to just kicking field goals, and that's what you're going to need in this game. As I mentioned before, in both games, it came down to 3 total points. It's going to be coming down to red zone things like this, where if the Rams can have a good red zone defense against the Seahawks, I don't care how well the Seahawks are moving, if you can just have good red zone defense, you're going to have a good chance of winning this game. All right, let's get into this Rams offense versus the Seahawks defense, and this is going to be such a fun clash between two elite groups in the NFL. You got the Rams that have the best offense in the NFL, the most efficient scoring offense. They put up the most points a game, and they are top in a lot of different categories. And you got the Seahawks, who are just a stifling team. I mean, number 1 in points per game is just incredible. And if you watch Seahawks games, this defense is incredible. Like, I just have to admit, as a Rams fan, as an NFL fan, this defense is one of the best defenses I've seen in the last few years. And a huge credit goes to Mike MacDonald, their head coach, and the way he's been able to turn this defense around from that Pete Carroll cover 3 kind of defense to what it is now. It is crazy, because the Seahawks can win with 4 guys up front, and their 4 main guys have done really well there. I mean, the big guys, when it comes to that defensive line, if they win with 4, oftentimes it's going to be Leonard Williams, it's going to be a Byron Murphy or a Uchenna Nwosu, even DeMarcus Lawrence, who they just added, so they can win with 4. But Mike MacDonald does a really good job of disguising things. He can bring those blitzes, and it's incredible because he's gotten so many different sacks from different position groups and from different players. There are 17 total different players that have at least a half a sack on this defense, and it goes from, you know, the defensive tackles to the outside linebackers to inside linebackers to a safety to a corner. So he uses every single guy in here, not only to get tackles for losses, but also to get those sacks. And yeah, he's an absolute genius on the defensive side of the ball. He is the Sean McVay of the defense, not only with how young he is, but how innovative he is, and what he's been able to do in such a short time is really incredible. I mean, you don't get the number 1 scoring defense in the league and ranks really highly across the board when it just comes to defensive statistics just by accident. Like, this has been a formulaic process, and they have a lot of different guys that can get it done there. Now, in saying that, as a Rams fan, I do have to say that Thursday night short week primetime game in Seattle, without Devontae Adams and without Kevin Dotson after a quarter or 2, the Rams were still able to put up over 450 passing yards, and they were still able to have Puka Nacua go for 225 on this defense, and they still had their success on them. So I think it's interesting to note of, like, great offense versus a great defense. The Rams offense really did do a good job against the Seahawks defense. I don't expect it to be that exact same kind of output. I think the Seahawks are going to adjust, and it's going to look a little bit different, but I think that this defense is capable of doing really good things, and they're going to have these big moments in the game against the Rams too. But I also think you can't shortchange the Rams, because you got to look at what they were able to do against the league's best defense in the NFL last time these two teams played on a short week without your best red zone weapon in Devontae Adams. I mean, obviously we know by now our former guy Ernest Jones has been on the Seahawks defense, and he's really helped this defense kind of step into their own. He is the green dot, he's the team captain, and it's very clear, very vocal leader. We know who he is because of his time with the Rams, and he's just continued to get better and better with the Seahawks. He fits this defense well. He's their leading tackle getter. He also has the most interceptions on this team with 5. He also got an interception in the playoffs last week against the 49ers. A lot of people kind of bang him as not being a good cover guy, but he seems to find ways to intercept the football. And even the last time the Rams and Seahawks played near the end of the game, I can't remember if it was overtime or 4th quarter, Ernest Jones nearly had an interception to end the game. That is crazy because he's taken leaps and bounds just to be able to go from just being a good sideline tackle guy, knowing kind of where the run's going to go, to being able to get turnovers, especially through the air, which is very interesting. Leonard Williams has been an absolute game wrecker on this defense. I mean, you see the stats on the screen. He's one of their leading sack getters. He gets a bunch of tackles for loss. Even on the times that he doesn't register a statistic on the stat sheet, he is still impacting the game. He'll still disrupt things, and that's one of those things, kind of like we talk about with Aaron Donald at times, where it's like there are things that he does that just don't go on the stat sheet, and he's going to impact a game, and Sean McVay knows this. And this guy is an absolute game record, even next to DeMarcus Lawrence, who they brought in from the Cowboys. This guy has been getting turnovers, he's been getting sacks, so like there are guys all across this defense that can make plays, and the Rams know that. We also have guys on our team that can make plays. But I mean, this is one of the most stacked defenses that I've seen in a little bit. There are big names on this defense that everybody knows, and there are also smaller names that people may not know but help this defense to run the way they do. And to me, it just seems like Mike MacDonald has a blank canvas, and he has a bunch of different things to be able to make whatever he wants each week. And so he's very creative, he is very innovative in the defensive space, and he has a bunch of different things and different pieces that he can use to make this thing run well. So it is a very scary combination for sure. But again, Rams did have a success last time. How much is that going to carry over into this game? We'll have to see. Kobe Bryant does also have 4 interceptions on this team. That's another guy that kind of gets forgotten about, but he's really good at getting turnovers. He also did punch out Puka Nacua to have his first ever fumble on the Rams, which was not fun as a Rams fan. But yeah, Kobe Bryant at corner is the guy that gets more of those takeaways. Devon Witherspoon is one of those guys who was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft in terms of he can tackle, he's very physical, reminds me a little bit of a Jalen Ramsey, but he can also shut down a receiver. So he doesn't have the production when it comes to getting interceptions and things like that, but he is a good shutdown corner, and he can make plays in the run game, which is incredible. Tariq Woolen will flash on and off at times. He's just kind of inconsistent, but he's definitely not a guy to discount or forget about, because he will flash and make those plays from time to time. He's just not nearly as consistent as some of the other guys in the secondary. And a big thing talking about this Rams offense versus this Seahawks defense that was big last time is going to be big again. The Rams love to run that 13 personnel, and the reason it works so well is because you get the base defense, you get more linebackers, bigger body, heavier guys to stop the run on defense, and then the Rams have got the 13 personnel who can run very successfully out of that, run block and all of that, but more importantly, they get explosives in the pass game from their tight ends and some of the play action plays they can have. But with a Nick Emanwari, he's a guy that is very similar to a Kyle Hamilton on the Ravens, so he can be used in a lot of different roles, but he can stay in that dime package with more defensive backs and a lighter thing to be able to cover those tight ends, but also play the run well. So Nick Emanwari is a guy that is very pivotal for this game, and if he wasn't playing, I think that may change what the Rams could do on offense. But Seahawks match up very well against this Rams 13 personnel against the offense because of a guy like Nick Emanwari, and he's going to move around, he's going to cover Puka, he's going to cover tight ends, make plays in the run game, he's going to blitz from time to time. So this guy has been big for them, and he's going to be about as big of a player to watch on the defensive side as it is on some of the bigger names that the Seahawks have on their defensive front. It's going to be very interesting to see at what rate the Rams run the 13 personnel this week versus their 11 personnel, because it felt like against the Bears last week we ran a lot more 11 personnel with those receivers versus the 13 personnel with all the tight ends. Do the Rams go back to that again? Do they go heavy? Do they go lighter? That's going to be very interesting because the Seahawks can play both very well. So a key matchup I'm going to be watching in this game is going to be Kevin Dotson versus Leonard Williams. I talked about him earlier. Leonard Williams is an absolute game wrecker. You guys have seen him, and he's stuffed the stat sheet. He's just an incredible player for them. That was just a great trade that they had. But Kevin Dotson was a very great trade for the Rams, and you felt his impact coming back against the Chicago Bears last week. While the Rams offensive line didn't play great last week, Kevin Dotson was not the reason for that. He was playing incredible. He's the best offensive lineman on this Rams team, going up against what I would say is their best defensive lineman on the Seattle Seahawks and the biggest disruptor. So this is going to be so much fun to watch this matchup. My next matchup is going to be a bit unconventional. I would typically go Ernest Jones against our run game, whether it be Blake Corum or Kyron Williams, just because he's great at playing in the run and all that stuff that we've talked about in the past of how good of a player he is in that sense. But it has really been interesting to see the growth that Ernest Jones has had in his coverage and the splash plays he's been able to make for the Seahawks, as well as his end of the time with the Rams. I mean, as I said earlier, he's leading the team in interceptions, and he just had another one last week against the 49ers. Last time the Rams and the Seahawks played, it was either overtime or the fourth quarter. Ernest Jones almost sealed the game with another interception. And even in the first meeting earlier on at SoFi Stadium, Jones had an interception in his hands that he just dropped from Stafford. So seeing him in coverage and the matchup between Stafford and him is going to be interesting because Stafford's done really good about not turning over the football, but Ernest Jones is one of those guys that's gotten his hands on a couple of Matthew Staffords. And another really fun matchup that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on is Puka Nacua versus Nick Emanwari. Obviously, he's like the Kyle Hamilton, as I mentioned earlier. He's going to be moving around on this defense, but we did see quite a bit of Puka Nacua versus Kyle Hamilton last time. Oh my gosh, I just called him Kyle Hamilton. We did see Puka Nacua versus Nick Emanwari a good amount last time, and those guys kind of got a little bit chippy there, and obviously a big game for Puka last time, but Nick Emanwari is a stud of a talent, a rookie, very lengthy guy. So this matchup is going to be fun to watch. Anytime you get Puka Nacua versus any DB, I'm excited. All right, some offensive keys here for the Rams offense versus the Seahawks defense. I'm going to start with winning first down. Kind of similar to the defense, but I'm flipping it to the offensive side here. I think the Seahawks defense is so good that if you get yourselves in any hole holes or not doing good on first down and getting in third and long scenarios, they're going to make you pay. And that's happened earlier on in the season, whether we won the game or not. So winning first down, getting 4 to 5 yards every first down would be big. That's something the Rams really did a bad job of last time against the Bears, and that did hurt them in a bunch of scenarios. So get those good positive first down plays, and I feel pretty good. I also think avoiding negative plays in general against a defense like this is going to be big, whether that be a tackle for a loss, whether that be a sack, just any of those kinds of plays. It feels like just gives the Seahawks momentum, and that can really kill a drive. Even if you have just one of those plays, it can end your drive. So avoiding those negative plays as much as you can is going to be big. And lastly, I have not playing scared as a big key. I think a lot of teams against the top defenses in the NFL tend to play scared, tend to play conservative, quick passes, just running the ball and just not playing free and being themselves, just a little bit tight. But I think if the Rams play their brand of football, be able to just be who you are, throw those deep digs, try to take some shots when they're there. Don't play scared, play your brand and see what ends up happening. You got some weapons, you got a bunch of Hall of Famers on this offense and a Hall of Fame head coach calling the plays. So to be who you are, don't play scared. That's a big key. But at the end of the day, who am I picking to go to the Super Bowl to represent the NFC? You guys don't know, the last time the Rams Seahawks played, I actually picked the Seahawks to win, and while I looked like I was going to be wrong in that last game, I ended up being right, unfortunately. This one I really could see as a toss-up game. I wouldn't be mad whichever way you go, but my bias tells me I think that the Rams are going to right the wrongs. They're going to get the revenge. They just did so well last time without some of their key players in the mix there. It's going to be a whole different game this time. They got that playoff experience. I think they'll do enough to Darnold, hopefully stop the run enough to put it on his shoulders. I just think that this Rams offense is going to be able to do enough against this top defense. I think the Rams are going to come out with a win 23-20. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be close. Could even go into overtime once again. And yes, you're going to need your defibrillators, but I have the Rams winning this game. What are your thoughts? Whether you're a Rams fan, Seahawks fan, or NFL fan in general, let me know down below. As always, I thank you guys so much for watching. If you could leave a like and subscribe to the video, make Rams content all the time. That's going to do it for me though. Have a great day. Horns up and God bless, guys.